Most retirement plans assume that part-time work will always be available and always be plentiful, and that assumption quietly fails. There's a sentence that shows up in almost every retirement conversation. It's said calmly, it sounds responsible, and it feels very flexible. I'll just earn a little on the side if I need it. Most people don't treat that sentence like a decision. It's said more like a safety net, and that's the problem. Because certain retirement choices, they don't eliminate part-time work, it just reshapes it. Quietly, structurally, when you first make that choice. You see, this isn't about motivation. It's not about your work ethic. It's not about your health. It's about plans that on paper look quite flexible, but you know what? They don't survive real life. So no one pressure tests the assumptions you make in a typical plan. When people plan for retirement, the hard risks get attention. Markets get modeled, healthcare gets debated, and the cost of housing, it gets revisited. But you see, part-time work, that usually shows up as a fragment of a sentence. You know what? I'll go back to work if I need to. And then the conversation just moves on because it feels harmless, it feels optional, it doesn't feel like a commitment to you. So you see, it survives planning conversations and it survives pretty much untouched. Not because it feels flexible, but because it feels a lot more comfortable. So work feels flexible, but that's only because we remember it wrong. You see, when you were working, income was tied to time. The more hours you worked, the more money you made. The less hours you worked, well, the less money you made. And so that's still the same mental model that we have as if we think about part-time work in retirement. So as we think about part-time work now, part-time work gets imagined as modular. Hours you can dial up or you can readily dial down. Effort that then stays proportional to how much work you're putting into it. But retirement income changes the system underneath it all. You see, income no longer stacks, it replaces effort. You see, and replacement behaves differently than addition, and that's where the mismatch begins. You see, predictable income, it changes what it means, is it worth it or not in the first place? You see, think about this. Once income arrives automatically, extra income behaves differently. Not legally and not practically, but small amounts of money, they really stop feeling additive, and quite frankly, that little extra money, it just feels disruptive to the life. You see, that work that you want to have during retirement, that little extra work, it only matters if that money coming in is consistent. You see, and if it's consistent, what does that introduce? That introduces schedules and expectations and alignment with payment cycles, right? You see, the income doesn't block work, all right? But it raises the threshold for when you feel like it's justified to go to that much effort. So here's the reality. Flexibility is determined by the job, not by the retiree. Part-time work sounds flexible until it isn't. Most roles you can imagine in retirement, they run on somebody else's clock. Schedules now run on weekends, constrained by office hours, client availability, surges in seasonality, and the conflict isn't ability, it's just collision. It collides with your travel plans, with rhythms in the family, and quite frankly, the energy levels that may go up and down in your life. It's not a dramatic event, it's just it doesn't fit cleanly and easily into the new life you imagine in retirement. So retirement life, it fills your schedule so much faster than you could have ever expected. Surprising to some, but retirement doesn't create emptiness, it creates structure. Routines harden in your life, expectations settle, and the days, they acquire shape, they acquire a schedule. And once those things happen, work has to schedule around your life and doesn't bend the other way around. And most people don't want to dismantle that life just for a little bit of marginal income. You know, that's not failure, that's just some extra friction. Here's the blind spot. The cost of that assumption, it doesn't show up initially when you first take the part-time job. It only shows up slowly thereafter as your options narrow. Because all of a sudden, fewer roles fit, fewer hours that feel acceptable, and fewer easy trade-offs that you can agree to. People don't regret retiring. They're just surprised when all of a sudden that flexible option they counted on exists, but only in a much, much smaller box. I thought a solid plan would protect me until real life showed up. In my situation, it was caregiving. Caregiving for a parent, which from a professional standpoint, a career standpoint, everything had to necessarily come to a screeching halt. So there's another way to think about it. Part-time work isn't a fallback position. It's a design choice you have to make. Part-time work isn't a decision that you procrastinate or to put off until later. Part-time work is something that either your earlier decisions gave you flexibility and room for, or quite frankly, really contracted. So being able to exercise that choice for part-time work, it isn't about willingness, right? It's about compatibility with the life that you created in retirement. And so here's the key. Compatibility isn't guaranteed by intention. Once you see that entire sentence changes. So that sentence, I'll just learn a little on the side. It stops sounding casual, and quite frankly, it becomes an assumption of the design of the plan for your retirement. And assumptions for that plan of yours, they demand your respect and your time. Most people don't get this wrong. They just fail to realize that this is something you have to contemplate and get right. So if this video did its job, next time you hear that sentence, I'll just work in retirement, hopefully it makes you pause. Not to tell you what to do, but just to make that decision to work visible before things become permanent. That's the difference between flexibility you imagine in your head and the flexibility you actually get to keep.